Cool. So right now, let's move forward and let's start creating our first custom block in our fictional block theme folder. Let's go ahead and create a subfolder. Now the name doesn't matter. You could make up any name, but just so we're on the same page, let's name this subfolder our-blocks. So inside the our blocks folder, let's create a new file. Why don't we make up a name of banner.js? From here, let's write a little bit of boilerplate code to set up a new block. So WP, now I want to type WP dot, but VS Code is trying to auto-suggest different things. So you actually have to press escape and then dot. So WP dot blocks dot register block type. We're calling that function. In the parentheses, we're going to give it two things. So A comma B. The first thing we're going to give it is a name. So quotes. Now let's make up a namespace that all of our blocks will use. I'm going to make up a namespace of maybe our block theme. So that's the namespace, and then /, and now the name of this specific block. So how about just banner? Cool. Now the second argument that we provide here, so instead of the B placeholder, it would just be an object with a few options. So in the curly brackets, let's drop down. Let's give it a title property. How about just banner, comma. Let's give it a property of edit. Let's point towards a function that doesn't exist, but a function that we'll set up and create in about 20 seconds from now. Let's call it edit component, comma. Let's have a property named save, colon. Let's also set that to a function that doesn't exist yet, but we can create in just a moment. So maybe save component. Cool. Now let's go create those functions. So down below all of the other code, function edit component, parentheses, curly brackets. Do the same thing for function save component. In terms of what our block outputs or saves, for now, we can circle back to this later, but for now, let's just have it return a paragraph, so a p tag opening and closing that says this is from our block. Again, we will circle back to this and actually return or generate HTML that makes sense, but this will just be a placeholder for now. Cool. Now in terms of the edit component, we want this to return a bit of HTML or JSX that will create this visual appearance. Let me go back to the home page. That will create this appearance, right? The banner. So let me show you what I would do. Inside the edit component function, this is what's going to show up in the admin editor, the block editor screen. Let's just say return. Now, parentheses for multiple lines of JSX. In between the parentheses, we can drop down. And now we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We already have this HTML laying around. So let's just copy and paste it and then adjust it to work as JSX. So within the WordPress directory for this website, if we go into WP content, themes, you and I have already created fictional university theme together step by step. So let's just dig into that folder. Or better yet, let's just open up that folder entirely in VS Code. Cool. So this window is the traditional fictional university theme. In this folder, just jump into frontpage.php. And my point here is that we've already set this up, this page banner area, right? So from lines 3 to lines 11, just copy that into your clipboard, and then back in the JavaScript file that we're creating together, when we're returning and then inside the parentheses, just paste in your clipboard. And now we just need to adjust this a little bit so that it works as JSX instead of HTML. So first of all, in JSX, you can't say class equals. It needs to be class name equals. So what I like to do is just select the first instance of class, and then you can press Control D on Windows or Command D on Mac, and just press that again and again and again until you've selected all instances of class, like this. At this point, you could retype in class, or you can just press the right-facing arrow key on your keyboard and then type in uppercase name. Cool. So all of those have been fixed. Next, right before the closing divs, we see an A element, a link. Let's just change the href to no longer use PHP. For now, just change the href value to be a hashtag placeholder like this. And then finally, I believe the only other change we need to make is on this second opening div with a class of page banner BG image, we need to address an inline style syntax in JSX. First of all, let's hollow this out so that it no longer uses PHP at all. So inside the URL, get rid of this opening PHP tag, get rid of the echo and the get theme file URI in the opening parentheses. So I'm getting rid of that. So now it's just URL, opening parentheses, quotes. And then after the .jpeg quote, get rid of this closing parentheses and this closing PHP tag. So now this is just valid CSS that isn't using PHP at all. However, now we need to convert it from literal CSS into a JavaScript object that will work with JSX. So let's get rid of the semicolon at the end of the line of CSS here. Okay, next, instead of this being a string of text, we need it to be an object. So when it says style equals, it's no longer quotes, get rid of the opening quote, it's two opening curly brackets. So the first is to just include JavaScript data in JSX. The second is for an object of styles. So at the end here, get rid of the closing double quote and just have two closing curly brackets. Okay, next, there is no such thing as background dash image in JSX. Instead, it's background squished together, all one word, uppercase I image like this. Background image. Next, for the value, it needs to be a string of text. So I'm going to place a double quote at the start of URL, and then after the .jpeg quote parentheses, right here, I'll have a double quote. Now, in terms of the path where we're actually trying to point towards to find this image, right, this background image here, well, let's just look in our theme folder. Now, we don't have that image in our current theme folder, but let's just borrow it from the fictional university theme that we've already created. So in other words, in about 30 seconds from now, we can create a folder named images that will be sitting right here, and it will have a JPEG named library hero. But to make that work, at the start of this path, we would just point to the beginning of our domain and then wp-content/themes and then the name of your theme. So fictional block theme. Now don't worry. Later on, we will make this dynamic so that the user can upload a new image in the editor screen or choose an image that's in their media library. But for this lesson, just to get something up and running, this should do the trick. If your installation of WordPress doesn't live at the root of your domain and it lives in a subfolder, then obviously account for that at the beginning of this URL path that we're temporarily hard coding. Right? This is not production ready code, but for now, that's okay. Cool. Let's go ahead and give that a save. And now we need to do two things. Number one, we need to have an images folder in our theme now. But number two, we need a way to transpile this JSX into regular JavaScript that the web browser can understand. In order to accomplish both of those things, let's just go borrow some files and folders from our traditional fictional university theme. So in WP Content, Themes, here is the original traditional theme that we built together. Let's just dig into that folder. Okay, now in this window, this is the new theme, the block theme that we're building. We only have these basic files so far. And we just want to move over a few files and folders into the new folder. So do this with me. In our traditional theme folder, let's move over the build folder, the CSS folder, the images folder, the INC folder, template parts folder, and the SRC folder. So just every single subfolder in our original theme, just move those over or copy and paste or duplicate those over into our new theme. So I'm just going to Alt drag those into my new theme folder, right? So in our new block theme now, all those folders show up in the sidebar. I also want you to move over two individual files from the old original theme. So number one, I want you to move over functions.php, and number two, I want you to move over package.json. So those two files, package.json, functions.php, I'll move those over as well. Okay, now those are all of the files that we need to move. At this point, I know there's a lot of moving pieces, so let me discuss what everything is. First of all, in package.json, if you were starting fresh and you weren't converting an existing traditional theme, you wouldn't need to copy over an existing package.json file. I'm just copying this over because it has basic scripts. For example, this powers the homepage slideshow. This is the base of my CSS. This is what I'm using to perform network requests. so on and so forth. But these are all opinionated choices. The only package that you truly need here is @WordPress/scripts. But I brought over the entire file because we're working on the same theme, right? So we're going to want these same dependencies. Okay, other than that, you might be wondering, hey, why did we move over functions.php? Don't block themes not use PHP? Well, no, they absolutely use PHP. In fact, if you go into the official 2022 theme, you'll see that it indeed has a functions.php file. Just like always, that's how you can run certain actions or certain filters. You can hook on to all sorts of different WordPress events, right? That's where you enable certain features. Really, that's where you customize anything and everything. So that hasn't changed at all in the move from a traditional theme to a block theme. Cool. Now let's move forward. So here's what we want to do. We can get rid of the build task within our package.json file. So jump into package.json if you haven't already. Get rid of the build task. The only reason we're getting rid of it is just temporarily, and that's because we want to start modifying the start script. Let me explain what in the world I'm talking about. So by default, the @WordPress scripts package is going to look in your src folder for a file named index.js, right? And it's going to transpile it, bundle it up. It'll take care of everything for you. However, we also want to tell it to look in our custom folder of our blocks, and we want it to look at our banner.js file. So here's what you can do. On the start task, let's say WP scripts start, but then we want to manually spell out which files to work with. So yes, we do still want to look in the src folder for index.js, but then a space, we also want to work with our -blocks/banner.js. This way, we're getting all of that great automatic WordPress scripts functionality, but we can have multiple files, multiple entry points, leading to multiple output files. So check this out. If we save this file, but now we just need to run npm install, so we just need to run that once. It's going to install all of the dependencies from our package.json file. Once that finishes, now we can just run the start task. So just npm run start. Now, as soon as that finishes, well, it's going to continue to run in the background watching for changes, but as soon as the initial processing finishes, now you can look in the build folder and you'll see that there's a file named banner.js. So this has transpiled our JSX into regular JavaScript that the browser can understand. So now we just need to register our custom block type to use this JavaScript asset in the editor. To make that happen, we just need to jump into our functions.php file. So functions.php. Let's scroll down to the very, very bottom, and we want to add an action on the init hook, and let's just name the function banner block, semicolon, create a function with that name, so function banner block. First, we want to register a JavaScript file, then we want to register a block type. So WP register script, semicolon. In the parentheses, we're going to give it three things. So first, we give it a name, and this is not the name of the block, this is the name of just the JavaScript asset. So we could call it banner block script. The second thing we give it is a path to the JavaScript file. So let's say git style sheet directory URI, parentheses to call that, concatenate on, so period, quotes, look inside the build folder, so /build/banner.js. The third and final thing we give it is an array of dependencies, so array, let's say, quotes, WP-blocks, comma, quotes, WP-editor. Then on a new line of code, now that we've registered the JavaScript file, we can register our block type. So register block type, semicolon. We're going to give it two things. The first thing we give it is the namespace and a name. So let's say our block theme. Remember, that's the namespace we chose earlier, slash the name of this specific block, banner. The second thing we give it is an array. So array, parentheses. You can drop down. We only need to give it one property of editor script and just set that to equal the name we chose here. So quotes, banner block script. We can give this a save, And then back in the admin dashboard, we need to switch to our new theme because I was still using the traditional theme. So appearance, let me switch to the block theme, activate it, go into a blog post and just start creating a post or editing a post. And if I try to add a new block here and type / and start searching for banner, there you see it. And if I try to use it, cool, there is the content, but it's missing our styling, our CSS. This is really easy to fix. We just go back into functions.php, search for our function named university features. Within this function, let's add a new line and say add theme support, semicolon. The thing we want to enable is called, quotes, editor-styles. Now again, if you were building a separate plugin instead of this unified theme approach I'm taking, you wouldn't load your site-wide CSS in the admin like this. Right? You would take the time to split out just the CSS that you need just to power this one block. Right? And then you would load the assets individually, just like we did in the chapter when we built our independent standalone plugins of a block type. In this case, we don't want to take the time to split out all of the CSS that has already been written for this existing theme. Right? We already have perfect CSS that has all of the styles we want. So I'm just going to load that entire bit of CSS in the admin block editor. So to do this, right below this line we just added, you say add editor style, parentheses, semicolon, and now we can give this an array. So quotes, the first item will be look in the build folder for style-index.css, comma, quotes, look in the build folder for simply index.css, but then at the very beginning, let's add in a Google address that will pull in the custom Google fonts. To find the Google address you want to copy and paste, just scroll up a bit and you're just looking for this custom Google fonts line around line 51, and this is the address we're interested in. So it begins with //. Just highlight to the end of that address, it ends in 700i, so I'll copy that. Then back down in the array of styles we're trying to load, we want the very first one, so another pair of quotes, comma, just paste in that value, but make sure that the beginning of it begins with https://, just like this. If we give that a save, we can then refresh the block editor screen. Oops, let me add in that block again. I didn't save my content, so if I add in the banner block, perfect. We loaded our entire global style sheet that already existed and it's already perfect, and it's not being applied to the outer shell, the outer UI of the admin. It's only being applied to the actual editor content. So while I wouldn't use this approach if I was creating actual, plugin block types to be distributed to a wide audience, I really like this approach for building sort of a content management system bespoke website for a client. Right, where maybe you're using something like Tailwind CSS and you're really authoring custom CSS, right? And you're not styling everything for each block. You have a lot of reusable utility classes. So you're just going to end up with one global CSS file that you can use on both the front end and the what you see is what you get editor. I've had really good luck with this approach, but as always, there's 10 or 100 different ways to achieve something in WordPress. Anyways, that's going to bring this lesson to a close. In our very next lesson, we're going to begin to make this content so that you can actually click on it and begin, backspacing and typing in custom values, choosing custom colors or a custom background image, so on and so forth. Let's keep things rolling, and I'll see you then.